Here we are, the first episode of Meet the Mayor. And I'm really glad to be helping you out by doing this moderating or questioning. And I think we'll get it off to a start about what it is like to be mayor and what issues are important to you.
Okay, first, let me say, Lauren, that I am delighted to have you and Nat on board. For a number of years, I did a program on WJOY radio, which is called The Mayor Speaks. And in fact, that program, if my memory is correct, had gone on for something like 18 years. Somewhere along the line, after I won the third election, apparently the station felt that it was no longer appropriate to have The Mayor Speaks. And I was very disappointed. I really was, because I enjoyed the program. It gave me an opportunity to communicate with the people of the city and the people of the region about the priorities of what was going on in the city of Burlington. And it gave me a half hour to do it. And I was very disappointed when that program was taken off the air. So I'm delighted once again to have a program on the air on a regular basis to basically talk about what the city of Burlington is working on, what our plans are for the future, what's going to be happening next week, what happened last week, and also have some guests on the program. I think as we progress, we'll get out of this office, we'll get out on the streets, we'll have an opportunity just to informally chat with people. I think the hallmark of the program will be informality, and just basically an opportunity to dialogue with the people of the city and the region. And once again, I'm excited about using cable access, because as you know, I see a tremendous future for public access in all aspects of life. Just giving people the opportunity to be on television, people from all walks of life. And you don't have to be the mayor or the governor, just senior citizens, kids, and I know that we're doing a good job in getting more people to use public access, so I'm delighted to be part of that process as well.
So if anyone wants to be on your show and call you up and talk with you on TV, could they do that?
They can be on my show, or better yet, start your own show.
Start their own show.
People should understand, and this is important, that we can start our discussion right on this issue. When we negotiated with Mountain Cable a year ago, one of the issues, as you all remember, because you were involved in that process, is that we wanted to see a very strong public access aspect to cable television in Burlington. And the reason that we wanted that is we think television has extraordinary potential, which is most certainly not being utilized on commercial television. Most of what's on commercial television is junk. The function of commercial television is to sell advertising and so forth and so on. And I think what public access can do is open up television for the entire community. So it's not a question. I'm delighted to have people on my own show, but I think we have the time on public access for any group and any organization to take advantage of it. And I know many of them are. And clearly more and more people should do it. It is free, or at best very inexpensive in terms of productive capabilities, so people should take advantage of it. I am, and I hope other people will as well.
Let's start by asking you about being mayor.
Okay.
And what
Good
it's
question.
like to be mayor, and what have you experienced in the past 6 years?
You know, sometimes, and because you're so much in the midst of the process, you can't sit back and say, what has it been like? I've been mayor for 6 years, and you work very hard on it, and it's so deeply ingrained in me, sometimes I just can't sit back and objectively look at it. I'm too much a part of it. I think it's fair to say that it's very hard. It's a hard job, and I'm not sure, to be honest with you, that being a mayor, and not just certainly for myself, any mayor in this country, is not even a more difficult job than being a governor or even higher on up, or a senator or a congressman. And the reason is that you are directly accessible to the people. Right? Governors in Montpelier, and most people, are not going to go walking into her office or any governor's office. Your congressmen and your senators are 1,000 miles away in Washington, and you write to them, you don't go into their office. But people feel correctly so that a mayor they've elected a mayor, they have a problem, they want to talk to the mayor, they want to get that problem resolved. So that's a very important part of the job. How do you solve day-to-day problems? Today, just for example, today. Met a fellow who I know who's a truck driver in Burlington, had gotten some tickets in downtown Burlington, okay? And in fact, the tickets, I think, were wrongly assigned to him. He was unloading, okay? So he has to go through a process with the city attorney's office to explain his case. I have to help him do that. We got a call from the local welfare office, from an individual who was having a very serious problem with welfare, has a sick child, needs some help. We've got to deal with that. Those are immediate problems. Before the day is over, we'll have a few more of those, okay? So on one hand, that's what you're dealing with, and you're paid to do that, and you've got to do that. Yesterday, somebody walks in, they felt that the snowplows weren't out early enough on their street. It has to be dealt with. Then there's a whole second aspect to the job, which is very different than dealing with day-to-day crises, and that is, where does the city go in the future? Where does it go 10 years from now, 20 years from now? You can't just deal with day-to-day crises, because major things are happening, and you've got to be in front of that. See, you and your staff and the administration, the Board of Aldermen, have got to be talking about the future of the city. And then thirdly, you have to be asking questions, what is the relationship between state government and local government, the national government and local government? I was recently criticized in an editorial in the Burlington Free Press, for example. They were critical that I had asked the Board of Aldermen to support an effort to get the Public Service Department to lower telephone rates. Should city government be involved in the issue of telephone rates when we in fact don't regulate the telephone industry? And I of course think we didn't, and I was delighted that the Board of Aldermen unanimously chose to ask the Public Service Department to do that. We are losing $1 million in revenue sharing because the federal government feels it's more appropriate to put money into Star Wars and into military spending than it is into the needs of the cities and towns, or into the problems of housing or environmental protection. Is that an issue that a mayor should be involved in? Should the Board of Aldermen be involved in? I think that they should. And almost lastly, and this is where I would say I end up as an unusual type of mayor, disagree with many other people. I think it is reasonable and right for city government to really think about and debate some of the most important questions facing modern society. I mean, because I think if we don't do it, in a sense, who is going to do it? Now again, there are some people who say, well, what do we elect the United States Senator for? What do we elect the President of the United States for? Hey, you in Burlington, in a small city, should not be worrying about the issues of war and peace. That's what we have the Congress for. And I don't agree. Environmental issues. You know, some of the major environmental issues facing our society are not going to be solved. You know what? There's not going to be a society. You're talking about this problem with the ozone layer that people see in the paper every day. When they're talking about climatic changes that are measurable within a few years' time, you're talking about wreaking havoc with the entire planet. And I think that it is not wrong for people within a community to sit down and dialogue and discuss those issues. Not just the mayor, of course, not just 13 members of the Board of Aldermen, but the community at large. Because ultimately, if I believe in anything, what I believe in is the concept of grassroots democracy. To think that the United States Congress or the President simply is going to sit there and do all the right things, and we're supposed to go to sleep and not pay attention to that, or that democracy means once every 4 years, gee whiz, we can vote, you know, for a Democrat or Republican for president. Isn't that exciting? Aren't we lucky to live in a free country? And then during the next 4 years, we should fall asleep. I absolutely and categorically don't believe that. Democracy means more than voting every 4 years or every 2 years. It means being aware, being educated as to what's going on, and making your views known. Believe me, the President of the United States and Congress does react when communities around the country say, we want to change our priorities. We believe in that. And for good reasons. That's what democratic society is supposed to be about. They want to get elected. And if they feel that people in the grassroots are concerned about an issue, they're going to respond, just as I would. You know, if I get a petition of 500 signatures on it saying, you know, Mayor, we're concerned about this, I would be a moron not to be concerned about that issue, not to respond to that. Any good politician does that, and that's what there's nothing wrong with that. That's what democratic society is about. You're supposed to respond to the needs of the people, and I think it is appropriate for local government to be talking about questions. What kind of society do we want for our kids? Okay, and I don't think it's wrong. Now, obviously, ultimately, we do spend, and we should spend most of our time on issues that we do have decision-making power on. We do decide how much money we are going to put on the streets and the sidewalks and improving those in the city of Burlington. And we make those decisions. And that's in fact where we spend the bulk of our time. But I think where I end up disagreeing with many people on the Board of Aldermen or many people in general is I am not afraid of seeing the City Council or the people of the city of Burlington dialoguing and discussing very fundamental issues, because ultimately they're going to impact on our city. I mean, if there's a war against Nicaragua, for example, who do you think is going to go fighting there and getting killed? It's going to be the kids in Burlington, Vermont, and Winooski, Vermont, and in the state of Vermont. I don't want to see that. It's wrong. And it is a local issue. So, those are some of the things that go through my mind. On one hand, absolutely understanding that we have to pay attention. Snow season is coming. We have got to do a good job in getting snow off of the streets, off of the sidewalks, and I think we have some new equipment. I think our Public Works Department is in better shape than it's ever been. And that's an important issue. It is not acceptable for me to be philosophizing about the end of the world problems and not doing my best to make sure that the people of Burlington have good streets and sidewalks and get the snow removed. So it's in a sense a balance of looking to the future, to making sure that the world survives, that we get a good shake from federal government and state government, but on the other hand, dealing in a very hard day-to-day way with the problems facing the people.
Let me ask you something. What do you think are the most pressing concerns of Burlington citizens right now?
Well, we can go on, for many, many years. Certainly the horrible murder that took place in the city is just, it's almost hard to know how to describe it. It is so senseless, so brutal, and so shocking that, one almost doesn't know what to say about the horror of such an act. Certainly right now, I think people are very concerned about that, and for good reason. It was a horrible crime. The police department, I think we have 8 detectives working full-time on that as well, and hopefully we're going to have a resolution to that crime. So that's certainly an issue that at this moment is right on people's minds, and certainly drugs and the impact of drugs on kids is an issue that we're all concerned about. I think some of the other issues that people are concerned about is improving our streets and our sidewalks. When I became mayor, there was in fact no plan to deal with it, and the streets and sidewalks really were in a bad way. And there's no reason. That was just inexcusable, and there's no reason why we can't have a sane policy toward our streets and sidewalks, and we are doing that now. I think we're about halfway through with our program. Almost every major artery in the city now, from Main Street to Pine Street to North Avenue, Colchester Avenue, Pearl Street, and many side streets, many segments of sidewalks have already been repaved. And what people must understand, or should understand, is that there is now money built in to a regular repaving program every single year. So the work this year, in fact, we spent about $1 million. And that money came from the excavation fee, and it came from the 16-cent property tax increase passed several years ago. So every single year now, there is a significant sum of money to deal with the problem. And I would say in 3 or 4 years, every street and sidewalk that is in need of repair will have been repaired, will be in excellent shape. And then we will have, for the first time in the history of the city, ample money set aside to maintain the streets. Now, it's like the teeth in your mouth. You got to go to the dentist every couple of years to get it cleaned. And every number of years, generally I think 6 or 7 years, depending upon the use of the street, there should be repaving done. And that's the cost-effective way of approaching it, the sensible way, and we're on top of that. So I think that's an issue that I feel pretty good that we've come a long way on. There's another issue that deals with the environment, and as you'll remember, several years ago, the people of the city of Burlington voted upon a very large $23 million bond issue to improve our sewers and our wastewater plants. There had been a problem in the city in a number of sections of the city, a really disgusting problem, to be honest with you, where literally sewer backup ended up in people's basements. Now, that's not a very pleasant situation. We are in the process now of rebuilding the sewer system of the city of Burlington. Very expensive. It'll take us time to do it. We made the start this past construction season, as those people who are driving their cars downtown will remember, and that will continue for the next number of years. We'll be making significant changes in our wastewater plants, which are now kind of old and obsolete, and we'll be improving them so that the effluent that leaves the city and goes into the lake will be much cleaner than it presently is, and I think that's an important issue. So those are two. We are making improvements now. We've improved the airport. We've expanded the airport. We've put a lot of money in recent years, and we'll continue into our park system. So those are major infrastructural improvements where I think we're in pretty good shape. The parks are probably now in better shape. Tennis courts are repaved. Basketball courts are in pretty good shape. South Park has been rebuilt. In general, our park system is probably today in better shape than it has ever been, at least in many years. Another issue, obviously of great concern to the people of the city, has to do with the waterfront and the development of the waterfront. And that very clearly is worthy of at least one show unto itself, because it is a very complicated issue. I think what I can say on it right now is that while we have not been able to move as quickly as I had hoped, we are in fact making significant progress. In the last year, 2 major occurrences have taken place, which I think are going to make the waterfront, and have made the waterfront, more open and accessible to the people of Burlington and of the entire state. And one is the construction of the bicycle path. I don't know if you've been on it, but it's a beautiful thing, and people, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback from that. And that's exactly what one wants to do. That is a way to bring people down to the waterfront to really enjoy themselves, and that's been a real plus, and I think step number one in terms of opening up the waterfront to the people. Another thing that's happened in the last year is the expansion of Perkins Pier Park. I don't know how many of the viewers have been down there recently, but basically the park space has literally been doubled. We've gotten the automobiles out from close to the lake, we've pushed them back and expanded the parking space that's available. There is free parking there for 1 hour, and after that there's a charge. There's now bathroom facilities open right down there. There's more docking, marina type facilities available. And mostly there's twice as much park space, new benches, picnic tables. Ben & Jerry's installed a little ice cream place down there. And that now has been significantly improved. So that's another area where people are going to be able to enjoy Burlington's waterfront. Clearly there's a whole lot of more work that has to be done in terms of public improvements for a start on publicly owned land. And my hope is that we'll be dealing with a bond issue very shortly to improve publicly owned land in terms of a boat place where people can rent boats, in terms of more park space down in the waterfront. So we're making real progress. That's number one. Number two, which is a very complex and difficult problem that I'm not going to go into great length right now, has to deal with the public trust doctrine, which essentially means that over 100 years ago, the state legislature gave to the railroad, a private entity, the right to do railroad work on filled land, allow them to fill the lake. And that land, and the argument is that the state granted them the right to use it for a public purpose, and now that land really belongs to the people of the state of Vermont. And clearly we have been using that argument in our negotiations with the railroad and with the Alden Corporation, both of whom own a large amount of filled land, in trying to get the best that we can for the people and getting development programs which are going to meet the needs of the people. So that's the whole public trust doctrine, though, is kind of a complicated issue. I don't want to get into it at great length. The third issue that we're wrestling with right now deals with zoning. And zoning is a mechanism by which a city has the right to say that in this area of land, this is the only type of development activity that can take place, or this space has got to be open for recreation or conservation or whatever. And those are the areas. The Board of Aldermen has been spending an enormous amount of time on those issues, and we are making progress. The ultimate goal, of course, is to create a waterfront that's going to be open and accessible and being able, and a waterfront that is a beautiful waterfront. Everybody knows that the views there are spectacular. And we want that waterfront to be enjoyed by all of the people, regardless of income. Now, if honest people do have differences of opinion as what should be down there. There are some people who feel, for example, that it should all be park space, open space. And that's not a crazy point of view. I happen to be a believer in parks. My own feeling is that that land should not all be park space. We have 3 beautiful waterfront parks in Burlington: North Beach, Oak Ledge, and Letty Park. And what we want, I think, is for 12 months of the year, activity down in the downtown waterfront. Downtown is different than other areas. So I think just having an open park space would not be as good as we can do. You want it accessible, you want all the people to be able to enjoy it, you want, I think, ultimately a mixed type of development down there. I mean, it would be fantastic being down there on a winter night, looking at the views there, doing something that is really fun and nice. And that's the goal that we have. So to conclude, we are making progress, but that's obviously very high on the agenda as to, as to work that has to be done.
So in reference to issues that are important to the people of the city, you say that they're basically infrastructure issues, and what else?
Well, I think infrastructure, certainly. People are entitled to know that our streets, sidewalks are in good shape, that our sewer system is in good shape, and I think we're pretty much on top of that now. Housing. Major issue, housing. The problem is clearly that housing in our area, which is a booming area, and let's not forget that we're delighted with this and proud of this, that Burlington has, I forgot, the 2nd or 3rd lowest unemployment rate in America. But one of the negative aspects of that is that as people come to Burlington, we don't have at this point the housing stock to accommodate those people, and that of course drives up the cost of housing. Rents are zooming up. There is not enough affordable housing either in Burlington or in Chittenden County or in the state of Vermont. In fact, clearly we need many thousands of units of affordable housing to be built to ease the pressure of housing. Now the problem that we have is that the nature of the economic system is that those people who are into housing want to make housing that they can make a buck on. And the way you make that buck is by building expensive condominiums. You don't build housing for $50,000 or $60,000 or for $40,000 because obviously you're not going to make that much money. The federal government has turned its back on the whole funding of affordable housing, a very serious problem. State government, in my view, is not doing anywhere near what it should be doing. What do? Well, we've done a whole variety of things, but housing then remains a very serious issue. Some of the other issues that we're dealing with are trying to deal with the problems that that women have, for example. And that's an ongoing issue. I think we've made some real progress in terms of stopping discrimination in housing. For example, a year ago, you'll recall that you could pick up the Free Press and there would be ads saying, apartment for rent, 3 rooms, no dogs, no students, no children. And that's gone. We've done that, and that makes life easier, I think, for a lot of people, including single mothers who have kids. Daycare, very important issue. We have built a new daycare center in the Basin Memorial Auditorium. A tremendous political fight to get that built. It's doing very well. We need more daycare facilities in Chittenden County, all over the state of Vermont. Very, very serious problem. Again, here's a situation where I don't think the local community itself can solve it. It's going to need to work with the state. So those taxes, oh God, how can we have a discussion about problems without talking about taxes? But I think my views on that issue are already very familiar to people. And that is not the slightest doubt in my mind that we have got to break our dependency upon the property tax is a major source of funding education and municipal services. The relationship between the state government, which has a dozen different broad areas of taxation, some of them pretty progressive, and local government, which until Burlington began to move forward, has always been totally dependent upon the property tax, is just incredible. And that has got to change. The city of Burlington especially is getting treated extremely unfairly by the state aid education formula. We contribute as a city approximately $7 million in taxes to the whole state aid education process, and we get $400,000 back. We're a floor town, despite the fact that our gross median income is quite low. We have a lot of poor people in this city, a lot of working people, and we are not getting anywhere near the type of state aid education that we should be having. And that's why the school board required a $1.7 million property tax increase last year, which was an astronomically large property tax increase. And they needed it. And they needed it because we are not being treated fairly by Montpelier. As you may know, we are now contemplating in fact there'll be a resolution before the Board of Aldermen on Monday, I believe, getting their approval for movement toward a lawsuit against the state and the Morse Giuliani formula. So those are, I mean, I can go on, and as the programs develop, of course we will. But those are a few of the major issues facing our people. And the issues change every week and so forth. But those are some of the important issues that are facing our people, and talk a little bit about how we're trying to deal with them.
It seems like these problems can only be solved with an enormous amount of patience. They seem like very long-term, the change is very long-term. How do you, in all your ambition and with all your ideals, deal with the frustration of how long it takes to actually get things done?
Oh, you deal with them with headaches, with backaches, loss of sleep. It is very frustrating. And essentially the problem is that you're living in a system in general which really in many instances does not want to address the problem. You have to almost buck the whole system to get things done. Sometimes that's more stronger than others. For example, the housing crisis is not in fact a difficult problem. It would not take more than a few years to build the many thousands of units that we need in the state of Vermont. So it's a question of allocating the money. I mean, it's not as simple as it sounds, but basically it's money. It's a decision that state government or federal government should say, affordable housing is a need. We're going to appropriate the money, They appropriate all kinds of money for nuclear weaponry. It's not very hard. They need the money. They appropriate billions of dollars for Star Wars. That's what somebody thinks they need. The money goes there. It would be very nice if somebody said we have to allocate on a national level a few $billion to build affordable housing. You get architects together. You figure out how you can make affordable housing attractive, cost-effective, environmentally sound, and you do it. The problem is that that's not anything that the federal government wants. It's not anything the state government wants. So then you're taking on, then it becomes very, very difficult. I think also you have normal bureaucratic problems. We have a form of government, which I think in the last few years, in all honesty, I think we've made more efficient and created a situation by which the process can move faster. But first of all, you have an idea. It has to go through the Board of Aldermen. You have 3 political factions on the Board of Aldermen, so there's a lot of squabbling. For example, the daycare center that I mentioned earlier. That was opposed, from my point of view, solely for political reasons. Our political opponents did not want us to build a daycare center. It took us years, a bit of fighting, to get that daycare center built when everybody understood that there was a real need for that. And now it's working as a private nonprofit very, very well. So sometimes you got the political crap that is, you have a good idea and your opponents say, oh God, it's a good idea, we can't let Sanders and his friends do it, progressives can't get credit for it. So that becomes, that I have to tell you is the ugliest aspect. When you know that they know that the idea makes sense, but they don't want you to do it because you're going to get credit for it. That's really pathetic. But then you have other situations where things just take time. And basically money. All right, streets and sidewalks. Okay, we are moving very quickly. We are moving now more quickly than we ever have moved in the city's history. $1 million a year is not chicken feed for a city our size. But you know what? We're not moving fast enough. Okay? Now, in terms of even the streets and the sidewalks, what you had to do is have competent people in public works. We now have them. In fact, they're far more competent than we had before. Do you know how long it took us to get a public works department? That was a political struggle because there were some people who said, gee, we like the old commission form of government. You know why they like the old commission form of government? Because their friends were sitting on the commission. Okay? Well, we've amalgamated them. We have a very good public works director now. We're moving much faster and more efficiently, actually, on that. But then you need the money to do it. Well, you know how long it took us to get an excavation fee passed, roughly speaking, maybe off by $2,000 here. The money now for street repaving in Burlington is coming from two sources: excavation fee, property tax increase. Both of those were fights. The excavation fee took us God knows how long to get. We were sued. We had to take on the private utilities. Tremendous fights with Democrats and Republicans on the Board of Aldermen. Okay? But now we got it. That's $500,000 a year approximately that's coming in to repave our streets and sidewalks. Property tax increase. When we proposed that, there were some people who said, well, let's do it just for 1 year, see how it works out. Well, we said, no, we need a permanent tax increase to get the program moving so you can plan for the future. That was a struggle. So, I mean, what you got is the political struggle, and then you got the bureaucratic struggle, and then you get consultants who have to do their work. It is frustrating. It really is. You know, I think if one looks at the record that we have established in Burlington in the last 6 years, you'll find a record of enormous achievement all over the place. But almost every accomplishment, and sometime I'd love to go down point by point with these things, took a tremendous fight. You know, and sometimes people say, why was there all this fighting in Burlington? My God, why can't people get along? Well, you look at what happened, and you have to take on the system, okay? You're not going to pass an excavation fee that the phone company likes. They don't like it. The gas company didn't like it. They sued us. Cable company didn't like it. We have to deal with them. The Democrats and Republicans didn't like it. We have to deal with that one. It takes a long period of time. So I guess to answer your question, you got political struggles. You're taking on, you know, we often are in the process of taking on special interests, okay? The fight with UVM to get them to pay a fire fee. Okay, this year we'll get probably $250,000. Went on for years. Okay, but that money now means we're in the process of purchasing a new ambulance that the city of Burlington needs. New equipment for the fire department that we need. We have to have a quality fire department, okay? So I think to answer your question, is there sometimes confusion and the people say, gee, don't you know that there's a problem over here? Don't you know that my street needs repaving? And the answer is yes. You know what? We do know it. But we also know that we don't want to raise property taxes outrageously because you have many low and moderate income people who can't afford higher and higher property taxes. So you look for alternatives to the property tax. And every time you look for an alternative and you ask those people who can best afford to pay it, they're going to fight you. They got the lawyers. They often will have the newspaper behind them. They may have Democrats and Republicans. It's a real struggle. So the end result is, to answer your question, is there is not enough money to deal. You know, we would probably need hundreds of millions of dollars now to deal with the housing crisis, streets, social programs that we want. Okay? Well, obviously we don't have that. So we struggle here and we struggle there. And I think that's what's also very time-consuming. Is that it's not a different thing than a family might have. Your average family knows that everything being equal, they would like their kids to go to a decent college. They would like decent health care, decent house, decent vacations for their families. But, you know, you can't afford it. And in a certain way, the city is in the same position. We understand, I think, you know, what we need as a city. And there's not a whole lot of disagreement about that. The question is, how do you get the money in a fair way rather than raising people's property taxes? What are your priorities? Dealing with the political struggles that go on. And that becomes frustrating.
Well, hopefully this program will be a vehicle to untangle a lot of these issues and introduce new ideas to people.
Right.
As mayor.
And I hope that we'll be able to take the show on the road a little bit, get out of the office here and go out and talk to people. And I'm excited to begin the process.
That's good. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Bernard Sanders, Meet the Mayor.